The Lives of Women in the American Revolution by Natalie Payne and Griselda Spadafora. The lives of women during the American Revolution were very different from today. Women were expected to get married, have children, work in the home, and obey their husbands. Despite the limits put on women, they played an important role in the growth of the American colonies. In many ways, it was the very hard work of women that the United States was built upon. Nowadays, women have the same rights as men do. For example, they can vote, they can go to school, they can own property, and they earn a fair and equal salary. But these kinds of things were limited back then. Women could not vote or run for public office. Married women could not make a will or own any property. Women had very few legal rights or freedom. They were expected to obey the man in their life, whether it was their father, brother, or husband. Women were expected to be married by the age of 20. Strong social pressure was put on women who didn't marry. A married woman's identity was represented by her husband. They could be beaten by their husbands and even returned to their husbands if they tried to run away. Widows and unmarried women had more rights than married women. They were allowed to buy and sell property, make a will, and sign a contract. Widows received 1/3 of their husband's property when he died. Sometimes widows even took over their husband's businesses. Back 250 years ago, women didn't have jobs. Their husbands were approved by their fathers, and they usually had many kids. Taking care of the children was their job. Mainly, the women spent their time raising the children, cooking meals, sewing clothes, weaving cloth, and keeping the house in order. Some women, despite their little education, were very influential in the American Revolution. A woman who made a huge impact on the American Revolution was Abigail Adams. She wrote letters to her husband, John Adams, and influenced his decisions greatly. Quote, "I long to hear that you have declared an Independence Day. And by the way, in the new code of laws, which I suppose it will be necessary for you to make, I desire you would remember the ladies, and be more generous and favorable to them than your ancestors. Do not put such unlimited power into the hands of the husbands. Remember, all men would be tyrants if they could. If particular care and attention is not paid to the ladies, we are determined to form a rebellion, and will not hold ourselves bound by any laws in which we have no voice or representation." End quote. Letter from Abigail Adams to her husband.
As you could tell by the letter, Abigail supported independence and believed it should be applied to women and men. Abigail was known for her early advocacy of women's rights, female education, and the abolition of slavery. Most women received very little formal education. Although some learned to read and write, many were illiterate. Girls typically learned the skills needed to run the home from their mother. It was idealized that a woman didn't need an education as she was supposed to work in the home. The country saw the education of women as one way to prepare the new country. However, the expansion of women's education was not meant for their own benefit, but to be able to mold future generations into good citizens. If the mother had a good education then, the children she would raise would also have a good education as well. The wives of wealthy plantation owners and merchants had very different lives from the average farmer's wife. They still had few legal rights, but they didn't have to work nearly as hard as women on the farm. Most wealthy families had many slaves to do the work around the house. These wealthy women were responsible for managing the slaves and making sure that the house was properly maintained. Slave women had the toughest lives of anyone during the American Revolution. Not only were they slaves, but they were also women, giving them no rights whatsoever. Slave women who worked in the fields were not only expected to work all day in the fields, but also raise children for more slaves and take care of their own family's household. During the war, women played different roles other than the traditional roles. Some women contributed by raising money, making uniforms and shirts for the soldiers who were involved in the war. Some women made sure that the soldiers had enough bullets. They collected scrap metals which were utilized to manufacture the bullets. Others assumed the roles of men who were involved in the war. They managed the homes, plantations, stores, and farms while their husbands were away serving. Throughout the war, women pushed boundaries of what their job were. Overall, women during the American Revolution didn't have a say in their everyday life. But they found a way to change America for the better and set precedents for future women of America.
Women in the American Revolution definitely had it tough, but they still changed America and how it is today.